Alrighty, so this week we begin with Shemot, also known as Exodus 32, chapter 32. We begin today with verse 4. Literally in English it would be, and he took from hand them, and he bind with he, or with it, with chisel, and he made it calf molten, and he said these gods you, Israel, that made ascend you from land meets Rayim. Kasuto wrote the following: in order to understand the details of the subsequent narrative, it is necessary to pay attention to the method of making images of silver and gold in antiquity. No matter how they do it now, we need to know how they were doing it then. So it goes on to say, first they would make a wooden mold and then overlay it with plating. Is that what that is? I want to say plating, but I think that's plating. With gold plating of precious metal. The existence of the inner core of the wood, which formed the greater part of the idol, serves to explain verse 20, which relates that Moshe burnt the calf and ground it to powder. I differ here. I think that he ground the gold to powder, or he ground it all to powder, but I don't think he was just talking about the wood on the inside. But anyway, that's what he believed. So it goes on, whilst the translator really liked that word, whilst the gold plating, which was made by melting down and casting the metal, in this case, the earrings, elucidates, that means it brings to light, the word mesahah, which means molten image, in verse 4. Compare Isaiah 30:22, he says, then you will defile your silver-covered graven images and your gold-plated molten images. Mesahat is the word used there. In order to sculpture the finest details on the gold plating, such as the eyes, the hair, and the like, artistic work required a sharp and delicate instrument, namely a graving tool. This, then, is the meaning of the verse, and he fashioned it, speaking of the gold, with a graving tool, producing by means of this instrument an exact likeness, and made it, when his work was complete, a molten calf, a calf overlaid with molten gold. All right, so now we're going to look at this actual verse. Vayikach is your first word, and so that's and he, and then the word for took. To take, this is that word that's, when you take a wife and you stick together like glue so the two become one, they can finish each other's sentences once they've been married long enough. If they've been married a very long time, one or both of them have learned not to tell the other one certain things and not to say certain things. Anyway, you know what I'm saying? They become one. They know each other, they know each other better than they know themselves, if you will. And so that's all in that idea. But here it's just he took something, he reached down, he grabbed something, and he took it. Is really the mainstay here. This is mi yadam, from hand them, is literally how that would be said in English, but we would say from their hand. But the correct way is from hand them, or from hand there, if you will. So he took from their hand, vayat zar, and he this is of the idea of to bind together, to bundle. So we're talking about the gold at this point, right? So he's pushing it all together in a big pile, if you will. This is oto, which just means with it. Bacheret. Now here's your word for the chisel. It's a graving tool, which letters were inscribed on wood or stone, hence poetically used of a kind of writing or writing instrument. Then it's vaya asahu, and he made it, and that's from asa, to labor, to work, to manufacture, to produce, that sort of thing. So he's actually making something, physically making it. What is it? Egel, a cow. And egel is from the idea of roundness, to be fat. So a stall-fed calf is a fatted calf, pampered, if you will. And that's actually in the explanation. Then we have Masecha. That's that word that Kasuto spoke about. It's the casting of metal, especially a molten image. Va Yomru. And he said so it's a modder is your word here. So, and he said, he brought forth, he shed the light on the subject, if you will. Ele, these, Elohecha, these are your gods. This cow. Now remember, if they're thinking of things as being alive, it's in plural. When you talk about the face, you talk about God, you talk about people. In Hebrew, in biblical Hebrew, you spoke it in plural. It did not mean that there was more than one. In fact, I don't know of a time when it did, but they said it in plural. So these be your gods. He only made one cow. Think about it. These be your gods. Yisrael. Asher, that ha'elacha, that made you ascend, that brought you, because if you say made, it's that made you come or made you go up, that brought you, me'eretz, from the land, Mitzrayim. So your translation. And he took it, speaking of the gold, from them and formed it with a chisel and made a molten calf. And he, speaking of Aharon, said to them, this is your God, Israel, which made you ascend from the land of Mitzrayim. This is the most blasphemous words that had ever been spoken by any human. Think about what they just did. I don't know if they're the most. I'm thinking of the next verse or two. There may be something worse. Let's just see. The word molten, Rashi wrote that as soon as Aharon put the gold into the smelting pot, the magic people from the mixed multitude caused the cow to come out through their magical powers. Yeah, he said that. Onkelos and Rashi agree that the Hebrew word ma'secha was much like the word ma'techet, in other words, poured. So they both agree that it's the idea of molten. Of the words, this is your God, Yisrael, Aharon just declared that all the miracles, signs and wonders the Jews had seen till now were performed by that cow. Yeah, but as blasphemous as these words are, the worst, my friends, is yet to come. Did I do this last week? It seems like it. There is a parallel to this story found in 1 Kings chapter 12, where Jeroboam set up 2 golden cows, one in Beit El and one in Dan, not Dan. You don't say D-A-N. It's not pronounced Dan. It's pronounced Dawn. He added the inscription, this is your God, Yisrael, which made you ascend from the land of Mitzrayim. Jeroboam believed that if he set up a place for people to worship close to home, they maybe wouldn't go to Yisrael, to Jerusalem, to be more specific, for the feast, and then maybe not return because it came to their senses, right? So he put these things up on the borders so that people could just go there, worship the cow, and go back home. Kasuto also pointed out that these 3 occurrences of this verse are all written in plural, while the occurrence in Nehemiah 9:18, the text is singular, as I have also translated, this is your God. Everywhere else it says, these be your gods, right? But in Nehemiah, it said it the way I did, this is your God. Because that's actually what is meant, particularly when you're talking about a false idol. That cow had one face. It never smiled. It never got angry. It never wrinkled its nose. It never did. It just had the one. So it's a singular. It's dead. It's not real. It should be in singular. Rashi wrote that they refers to the mixed multitude of the Egyptians who apparently wanted to convert to Judaism when they left Egypt. I guess he saw the 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston a few too many times. I'll help myself out. He saw He somehow is supposed to have deduced this from the sentence saying your God instead of our God. Who are the your, if not Yisrael? Who would they be? These be your gods, Yisrael, not you Egyptians who want to be Jews. Yisrael, it said. The argument is completely without merit. Nachmanides and Rashbam wrote that the Yehudim, that's the Jews, they couldn't have believed that the cow was a god, but that the people believed that the cow was imbued with God's spirit and the power, his spirit and power, and they could receive some mystical power from it. So, yeah, I started on the wrong verse, didn't I? It can be believed that the cow can have and give mystical powers, but it cannot be believed that the cow is a god. Check. I got it. All right, so now we pick up where we're supposed to. With verse 5, which literally says, and he saw Aharon, and he built altar to faces, and he called Aharon, and he said, feast. Here's the word. To Yahweh tomorrow. Bayar, and he saw. It's to see, to look at things, to perceive them. It's the way we use it. It's to be pleased with the sight as the eye lingers on objects of pleasure, and with them we feast our eyes. To look with sorrow, to be witness of anything sorrowful or grievous. It can be anything, right? It's what you see before your eyes. And he saw Aharon, so Aharon saw. Then it says, Va Yivan, and he built, he erected. It's like building a house or building a temple, or in this case, building a cow. You're right. So you build things. Now he's going to build something, I guess, to go with the cow, right? Mizbeach. Oh, yeah, he's going to build an altar. Wow. An altar for making burnt sacrifices to the cow. Lepanav, which is literally two faces, so you know it's before. It's in the presence of. But it's before the cow, or in the presence of the cow. So they're going to be pretty close together. Vayikra, and he called out, he cried out. It's to call out with a loud, passion-filled voice. Doesn't sound like Aaron. It sounded like Aaron was a little excited about it, if you ask me. Could have been mad, though. Yeah, that's passion, too. Aharon, he called out. Vayomer, and he said, he brought it to light. Did I miss a word? Yeah, I almost missed a word. Chag, that's a feast, a festival. It's from the idea of dancing and spinning around in a circle and being giddy, right? A festival, La Yahweh Mahar. So tomorrow we're going to have a festival. He just called the cow by God's name. These are the most blasphemous words that have ever been spoken since man was created. So our translation, and Aharon perceived, and he built an altar before it, the cow, and cried out and said, tomorrow is a feast to Yahweh. Feast to Yahweh. Those words, Nachmanides wrote that Aharon was innocent of sin, since he believed that Aaron's intention was that the people would actually sacrifice to the real God. Aharon perceived those words. This tells us that Aharon knew exactly what he and the people were doing. As you go through this and you read the sages, they spend, I'm sure, hundreds of pages arguing about how Aaron was innocent in all of this. But the text tells us otherwise. Verse 6. And he rose up early, so it's and they rose up early, but it's literally and he rose up early, from next day, and he ascend burnt offerings, and He make draw near they peaceful, and he dwelt the people to eat and drink he, and rose they to play. Now this verbiage is almost exactly the same verbiage that was used when Moshe built the altar and started the sacrifices for the people to enter into covenant. These are almost identical. So we've already had all these words is what I'm trying to tell you, but it has been a while. It starts off with Vayashkimu, and he rose up early, and they rose up. It's to rise up early in the morning, to put a load on camels and other beasts, which nomad tribes do very early in the morning, when followed by a bait, which this one is not, so we don't care what that says. Mimacharat, from the next day. We would say tomorrow, right? So they woke up, we'd probably say the next day in this case. Vaya alu, and he ascended they. So something went up. It sounds like the people are going up, but the next word is olot. So the burnt offerings went up. The smoke of the burnt offerings and the scent of the burnt offerings is floating upward. Va yagishu, and make they draw near. So it's draw near to approach in making the sacrifices. This is shelamim, which is peaceful. So now they're making peace sacrifices to the cow, not to God, but to the cow. Vayeshev, and literally, and he dwelled. It just means it's in masculine. So they dwelled in that place. They loitered, if you will, in that place. Ha'am, the people did. Le'echol, and they ate. Isn't that what you do? You eat and you drink when you're making these sacrifices. So they ate. Ve'shato, and they drank. Vayakumu, and they rose. It's to arise from a seat, from a bed. They stood up, if you will. Le zachek, to play. To play, to sport, to jest. To laugh repeatedly, especially when singing and dancing. To make sport of anyone or anything. And more emphatically, to mock. And they rose up to mock. So here's the translation. And they rose up early the next day and made burnt offerings to ascend, and they brought peace offerings, and the people remained to eat and drink, and they rose up in laughter and dancing and mockery. For the word remained, most people have reclined in their translations. Targum Onkelos changed the word to set, to insert the customary eating practice of the time of his writing. When Yehudim ate together, now this is around the time of the 1st century, the end of the Second Temple, going 100 or 2 years, it's difficult to tell with Onkelos when exactly all that happened. Because it looks to me like he lived in the 1st century, but somehow he didn't write his stuff until the 2nd century. However that worked out. Anyway, so he was telling what was customary practice in the time of the Second Temple, 1st century. So when the Yehudim ate together, they sat on the floor and leaned against each other. This practice is also mentioned in 2 Samuel 20:5 by Onkelos, and several times in the New Testament letters, such as John 21:20. So you can be assured that this is how they did things during the Second Temple period. All right, in verse 7, and he spoke, Yahweh, to Moshe, walk, go, if you will, descend, for corrupted people your people are corrupted, that make ascend you, that you may go up from the land of Mitzrayim. What? Come on now. Vayedaber, and he spoke. He set these words in an order. God thought these words out and put them very clearly because he wanted to make a statement here. Yahweh gives God's name. So he spoke these words, these properly well-placed words, El, to Moshe. Lech, go, walk, get out of here. Take one step in front of the other. Go, he said. Red is the next word. Descend. Go, put one foot in front of the other and go down this mountain. Key, because, for, whichever way you want to see it, shichet, corrupted, destroyed to ruin, either by laying waste as a country or a region, a field, or by pulling down as walls in the city, by killing both individuals and whole peoples, to act wickedly, to destroy either by laying waste and destroying as a land. This is some pretty bad corruption here. In a moral sense, it's to be laid waste, to be utterly corrupted. So, your people, God is talking to Moshe, and he says, your people are corrupted. Asher, which He'elaita, which you made go up. You made them ascend Me'eretz, from the land Mitzrayim. So God's saying, you did it. He ain't taking the blame for any part of this. No, I'm not going to have any part of it. So your translation, and Yahweh said to Moshe, go, descend for your people, whom you made to ascend from the land of Egypt, or Mitzrayim, are corrupt. She blamed also the Jews to act corruptly. Boy, babe. It can't be that the Jews were corrupt. It can't be that the Jews corrupted themselves. Oh, no, they got to be somebody else made it. The devil made them do it, people. The words, whom you made to ascend from the land of Mitzrayim. God doesn't even claim them here. In fact, he's throwing the monkey on Moshe's shoulders. The people you brought out of Egypt. That's some funny stuff, people. On a not funny note, Kasuto argued that the children of Yisrael were not worthy now to have been led out of Mitzrayim by God, because they have attached a partner to him by saying, now listen to that, he's saying that they're not worthy to have it said that God let them out, because they attached a partner. They attached a partner to God by saying that the cow led them out of Mitzrayim. His argument is completely without merit if you think about it. If the cow becomes God's partner, by it being said that the cow led them out of Mitzrayim, then God is giving himself a partner by saying that Moshe led them out. Do you follow what I'm saying here? It's a dumb argument. Plus, God would be making himself a liar in that he has already said that there is none beside me. Moshe is not beside him, and that cow sure isn't beside him. Additionally, we know that God led the children out. Moshe knew it, and God knew it. Thus, there is another explanation. I think it is levity. But either way, God is not changing history, and he is certainly not lying. All right, verse 8. Turn they hurriedly from the way that commanded them, made they to them calf molten, and he bowed you they to he, and he slaughtered they to he, and he said they, these gods you, Israel, that made ascend you from land Mitzrayim. This is God explaining to Moshe what they've done. Now, Moshe can't see it. He can't imagine it. So it's not really going to set in at this point. Saru, they've turned. They were going this way, and they're going that way. You know, they're going in a different direction. They have totally turned. Maher, in a hurry. This is like mind-boggling speed. Before I even finish my sentence, they were going in the other direction. It's kind of what he's saying. Mean from Haderek, the way. They've turned with mind-boggling speed from the way. That's, of course, an action of going. It's walking. It's a journey that one takes, a way, a path in which anyone goes. A person, the way of anyone, is the way in which anyone is accustomed to go. It's a way, in other words, a mode, a course in which one goes, especially a way of living or acting. That's exactly what just happened, right? Moshe has given the people the law verbally. They've heard the whole thing. It's not written in stone, just, well, at this point it is, but they haven't seen it. It's written in stone, but they've already agreed to it verbally. And before they could even get it, the thing written down and returned, they had already turned away from their agreement with God. This is Asher, that Zivitim, that God commanded them. The way that he set up, the way that he constituted, that he appointed, that he decreed, that he determined, that he commanded. Asu. And they've made themselves. That's the asa, to produce, to manufacture, to fabricate. So he's telling them they actually created something, lachem, for themselves, egel, a cow, a fatted calf, masacha, a molten fatted calf, vayish tachavu, and they, and he bowed, they literally, but they've bowed down before it. Lo, which is to it, they bowed down, and then lo, to it. Vayizbechu, and they've slaughtered animals, which would tell you, if you know about slaughtering animals, sacrificing animals to a god, you know that they're eating the animal as well. They've sacrificed lo, to it. That's that sound like word. It's not the negative here. It's lo, which means to it. Which back in that time, I think they probably said le-o instead of lo. But I don't know anybody from that time period that can verify me, so you don't have to believe it if you don't want to. Then it says volume ru. Well, now wait a minute. Rich, don't you know about these? Anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there. And he said and they said, they spoke, ele, they said, these, Eloheha, these be your gods. You know, this is a long thing. Yisrael, that made you come up, that brought you from the land of Mitzrayim. So your translation, they have turned speedily from the way that I commanded them, and have made for themselves a molten calf, and they have bowed to it, and they have slaughtered to it, and they said, these are your gods, Yisrael, which made you ascend from the land of Mitzrayim. The words, the way that I command, in other words, the commandments are the way. Do you get it? The way that I commanded, that's the same as saying the commandments are the way. Yisrael has just been given the Torah verbally. Moshe went to the mountain to get the verbal agreement put into writing. The way is the Torah. You can compare the following verse from the King James if you like. I know that most of you Jews have one secretly. But there's a verse in there. They translated it, and I had to use it this way to get this. I couldn't find it this way anywhere else because it's not the way that Jews translate it. So I'm just teasing you. It says, train up a child in the way. Let me use the quotes here. In the way he should go. And when he is old, he will not depart from it. So most of us have heard it that way, right? That's King Jimmy, or King James. And so we got Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way. Train him in the way. In the way. You got to train him in the way. Do we know what the way is? We need to know what the way is. You guys saying way with me? Say it with me. Way. All right. Because I'm trying to get you to understand something here. Train them up in the way. See, and for people who, in the Pentecostal experience, I could talk about this because I was part of that for a long while. I grew up in it. And I can tell you this, the Pentecostal experience is identical to the Jewish experience. Identical. They have all the rules and the regulations that nobody can live by. They have all of the feasts that you got to attend that nobody does properly. They eat when they're not supposed to. When they're supposed to be fasting, they're off sneaking food and all. It's identical to Judaism, people. And most of them are circumcised. You know what I'm saying? There's almost no difference between the two religions, except that, well, in the UPCI, I should say it this way, they thoroughly believe in one God. They do not believe in the Trinity. They will before it's over with, but they don't right now, not officially. But anyway, let's get back to the way. Train up a child in the way. All right, if you train up a child and you say, look, we want that child to think for himself. We want him to make his own decisions. So we're not telling them anything. We're not telling them the way they ought to think, blah, blah, blah. You're raising up an idiot. And who's the bigger idiot? You. You don't raise up a child letting them think about what are they going to base their thinking on. That is so offensive and so beyond imagination stupid. You don't let a child raise itself. You don't let children raise children. They don't have anything to base any decision on except selfishness. Where do you think that's going to lead? Selfish adults who think of no one but themselves. That's all you get from that. You do not get well-adjusted people. Period. End of story. You will not ever convince me of that. And when they're old, they're going to be selfish because that's the way they were trained up in. Maybe they trained themselves, but that's the way they were trained up. And when you're trained up in the way, you grow up that way. So it's difficult when you get a Christian who grows up believing in the Trinity to ever get them to walk away and understand that the real God is with the Jews and that Christianity is a false religion. They're like, oh, I cast you out, you demon devil. They can't hear the truth at all, right? Because they grew up in their way. But you know what? If you train them up in the way that God commanded, you train them up by God's command, not man's commandments, but God's commandments. When they're old, they won't depart from that way. So whatever way is trained up, that's the way it's going to happen. But here's my translation. Train up the young. Command, it says upon mouth in Hebrew. Train up the young upon mouth. So it's train up the young, command the way. This is a commandment to you to train them up according to the commandments. And this is a commandment to you to command that they are raised up according to the commandments, the way. The commandments are the way. Train up the young upon mouth. Train up the young, command his way. You command his way. You decide how your child's going to grow up. That's your decision because you have life experience with which to base your decisions upon. Your child does not. So you have to command the way. Because indeed, it says, when he grows up, and remember this is written in masculine, so it's when they grow up. When the child grows up, when it grows old, he will not turn from it. So if you're raising, the reason why I brought up the Pentecostals, if you're raising them up in the Pentecostal church, it becomes a very confusing thing for the elderly women whose sons are still in prison and won't give their hearts to God under any circumstances, even though they were raised up in their Pentecostal way. No, the way they were brought up is the way they're going to be when they're old. God's not going to make it right. He's not going to fix it. Their religion isn't real. It's not right. And God is not obligated to fix it. And he won't. Because you were told by God, this Torah was given so that every man, that's what the whole day of Pentecost was about, so that every person and every tongue could have the Torah, not just the Jews. That's what that whole thing was about. It gave the Torah to everybody. And now that everybody has the Torah, that's what they're supposed to be living by and raising their children by. There is no excuse. God gave it to all of mankind, not just the Jews. I may get myself in trouble for saying that. All right, they have turned speedily. The Sephono said that they turned away so quickly that God didn't even have time to give them the Torah, which I agree with. I said that earlier. Forgot they said that. It's probably where I got it. I think that what the Sephono is attempting to imply here is that the people turned away with lightning fast speed. I think that's what they were implying, not so much that, because it took God 40 days and 40 nights. Come on, that's that's not exactly speedily. All right, verse 9. Yeah, we got time. And he said, Yahweh, to Moshe, seen me, I have seen, the people, this, and behold, people stiff back, or stiff neck. It is a stiff neck people. Yeah, you know, you've heard this. Vayomer, and he said, he brought it to light. This God's going to make you understand it when he says these words. It's Yahweh, so we know that it's God. El Moshe, so he said to Moshe, Ra'iti, so it's seen me. I have seen, I have perceived, I've gotten to know these people through experience. It's of the things which we perceive with the mind or heart. Hence, to perceive, to understand, to learn, to know. He knows these people. Et ha'am, the people. Hazeh, and there's a lot of languages that do that, by the way. Vehine, and behold, you know, I know them inside and out. I perceive these people, and behold, these people, kesheh, they're hard. They're made, it's almost like saying they're made for hard servitude. In a bad sense, they're hardened, they're stubborn. They used to call that to be hard-faced. They kind of say things like that now. Being all hard, you know, trying to be tough. It goes with this. Stubborn of heart. Then it says, oref, the neck of an animal or of a man. It's just the neck. It's to give the neck is to turn your back. And it says who? So it's this people. Your translation then is, and Yahweh said to Moshe, I have perceived this people, and behold, it is a stubborn and obstinate people. Stiff-necked people. I've actually heard Jews brag about being stiff-necked. This is not a good thing. This is an insult. And just because it's an insult doesn't mean it isn't true. If God said it, you can depend on it being true. Of the word stiff-neck, Rashi said that the people turn their stiff necks away from anyone who criticizes them and do not listen. That's probably his experience with people in his time. Even Ezra came up with a parable. Sorry about that. I don't know where that came from. The stiff neck are like a man hurrying on his way, but does not turn his stiff neck to respond to anyone who calls out to him. That's cute. These guys came up with explanations like this because they took everything literally. Everything. However, this approach has no place in the Jewish or Christian Bibles. It just don't belong there. Because the Christian Bible part, you know, the New Testament thing, that was written by Jewish men, Jewish rabbis. They wrote these letters. These Jewish rabbis wrote letters to other Jewish rabbis concerning matters of the Jewish religion. The perversion of those Jewish letters by Christians does not change the fact that they're Jewish documents. And in that time period, literalism did not belong. If I were to tell a Christian that there is an old Jewish idiom that says, and I'm going to tell you, this is real, the Jews have no star. The Jews have no star. This is a real idiom from Judaism, and it's an old one, very old. They have no star. Now, the Christians would be very joyful, and great joy. With great joy, they would conclude that Jesus came for the Christians, you see, not the Jews, because after all, the wise men followed a star to find Jesus. So So, yeah, see, it's not for the Jews. And that's okay. The Jews don't tend to have a problem with that. But this is a real Jewish idiom from a very long time ago, but it means that the Jews have no luck. Or maybe better said, if it weren't for bad luck, the Jews would have no luck at all. Gloom, despair, and agony on we. I've said you went a long way for that. Yes, I did. That's kind of a take on something from Hee Haw from a long time ago. This approach to idioms is typical of the Jewish experience from the 2nd century BCE to modern times. Because the Jews are taking it all literally, just like the Christians are. The Christians came from that, they stole everything from the Jews. Of course, they're going to do the same things the Jews did. Even though they're trying to be the opposite, they're still doing the same thing. This has been going on since the 2nd century BCE, before the Common Era, all the way down to the modern times. Catholicism, its origins truly began in the middle 300s CE. So this is 300 years after the temple, 230 years after it was destroyed. So this is a long time after the fact. This wasn't during the time of the Yeshua guy that they called Jesus. This is 270 years or 230 years later. That's when Catholicism truly began. But it was not fully established as a religion until the mid to late 400s CE. So you got to tack on another 100 years now, which is the politically correct way, of course, of saying AD. So it was in the 400s AD, if you will, or approximately 400 years after the so-called New Testament period. That's how long it took, 400 years. Christianity broke away from Catholicism in the 1500s CE. That's 600 years ago, if you don't know. You can't do the math. That's 600 years ago. That's when Christianity started, 600 years ago. The Muslim religion is older than the Christian religion, though the Catholicism is older than the Muslims. Thus, the history, customs, culture, and religion and religious practices of Christianity have followed the exact approach to understanding the idiomatic Jewish Bible and the idiomatic letters written by Jewish rabbis to other Jewish rabbis concerning matters of the Jewish religion. Catholic and Christian perversion of the meaning of those letters does not change what they are, nor their intended meaning. Biblical history, customs, and culture is based on the religion of a people whose language was idiomatic. The language was idiomatic. Today, it is a literal language with thousands upon thousands of idioms. But back in the time of the Second Temple, it was an idiomatic language. The recognition and understanding of this, of the importance of this simple truth has sent both religions down a very dark, very godless road. The vast majority of the Jewish people now claim to be atheists, so don't tell me they didn't go down a dark, godless road. That's exactly where atheism is. And although the vast majority of Americans still claim to be a Christian, virtually none of them live according to the rules and laws contained within their Bible. Did you know that there are more laws to live by in the Christian New Testament than there are in the Jewish Bible? It's true. Anywho, we've got enough time to go on to 10. Literally, and now make rest to me, and he knows me in them and consume them, and I make you to nation great. Ve'ata, and now, God said, hanicha, make rest, to sit down, to sit in a place, to lay down on a bed, especially to kneel down as a camel, because that's what you do. You kneel them down so they rest, right? Give me rest, he said, li, to me. Give me rest. Ve yihar, and burn and kindle. It's spoken of rage and anger. Then it says api, that's my nose, right? Properly a breathing place, the member with which one breathes, the nose. used of the nose of men and of animals, the blowing in breath through the nostrils as of those who are enraged, right? Because the nostrils move in and out from the hard breathing of the rage. It's used, the word api is then used for rage and anger, which shows itself in the hard breathing and the nostrils moving in and out. And here it's used of God. Then it says, Vahem, my rage in them, Va'achalem, and consume them, to finish them, to destroy them, to waste them away, to make them to perish. It's all those things. Ve'esa, and I will create, to manufacture. I'm going to make something. What's it going to make? Let's see what it is. Otcha, I will make with you, legoi, a nation, gadol, great. I will make a great nation out of you. So our translation is, and now, leave. Take rest of me. Leave me. And my rage, my rage will burn against them. And I will finish them. And I will lift up a great nation from you. Leave, take rest of me, let me alone. The Babylonian Talmud in Berachot 32a, in that place, Ibn Ezra, Rashi, and Sa'adiah. No, it's in the Babylonian Talmud, plus in the writings of Ibn Ezra, plus the writings of Rashi, plus the writings of Sa'adiah, right? You got that? All four of them, and others wrote, this statement means that God wanted Moshe to go and pray for the people. Oy, oy, oy. They are all bothered by the idea that these words might suggest that Moshe was hugging God when God spoke these words. These words do not imply any such thing. Give me rest. In other words, leave me alone. It means go away. Go away. It has nothing to do with those two hugging each other. I don't know. It was very confusing. All right. Verse 11. And he weakened Moshe. So Moshe became very weak and faint, right? Faces Yahweh. So he weakened before Yahweh. His God, God his. And he said, to what, Yahweh? He furious knows you. In people you, that may come you from land Mitzrayim. Are you hearing it now? He's making God the one who did it. In power great, and in hand mighty. By Yachal, and he weakened. It's to be rubbed, to be polished, smooth. What? To be worn down in strength. To be infirm of the heart, be worn down. In other words, to be grieved. He was grieved. Moshe was grieved. Et Panay, that's faces, Yahweh. So he was grieved in the presence of Yahweh. And you know, it makes sense, right? Elohai, his God. Because his God just said something really hard to hear, right? So he was grieved. This Vayomer, and he said, Lama, to what, Yahweh? This is calling him by name. Yehereh. What is this fury? What is this burning fire that has been kindled? What is this rage that you're feeling? Why are your nostrils moving in and out? Why is there smoke coming out of your ears? Okay, you didn't say that. It's kind of like that. Mecha, why do you feel this way toward your people? Why? Asher, that Hotzeta, that you made to go up, to ascend Eretz from the land meets Rayim. You made them come up. Bechoach, in power and strength and might. And, right? You did it in that. Gadol, in great power and strength and might. Uvayan, and in a hand chaza ka, and a mighty hand and a powerful hand. And Moshe was grieved before Yahweh, his God, and he said, "Why is your fury raging against your people, which you brought from the land of Mitzrayim in great power and a mighty hand?" Now God's already told him. They went down and made a cow and said the cow did it. But he hasn't seen it with his own eyes. It's not registering at this point. Of the words, "Why, Yahweh, is your fury raging against your people?" Even Ezra and Nachmanides saw this question as a prayer. But they did not agree as to when it was prayed. Making these words a prayer is based on a ludicrous interpretation of Vayachal, and he weakened, which in this case should be translated as, "and he was grieved," from the idea of Moshe's heart being worn down, in other words, grieved from sadness. Even Ezra believed that Moshe would not have prayed for the people while they were actually committing the sin. To which I would ask, don't people need prayer the most while they're steeped in sin? Nachmanides felt that Moshe did not pray until after he destroyed the cow. That both are wrong is clear, given that this sentence is not a prayer, but a question, asked by a man who had no idea what was going on in the camp below. Rashi wrote that Moshe was pleading with God that his jealousy over the cow was undignified and beneath him. Oh my God. I think Rashi may still be burning in Christian hell over this one. Just saying, just throwing that one out there. In other words, which you brought from the land of Mitzrayim. Moshe is now throwing the monkey back on God's shoulder. Rashbam agrees with me in that he wrote that Moshe was turning the tables on God. See, I'm not the only one saying that, but I said it before I read that he said it. All right. Ooh, this next one's a big one, so I don't think we have enough time. Do you, Donna? All right. Yeah, this is a whopper. Okay, well, we'll cut it off here. Shalom v'shalom, y'all.